I want you to consider what this parable might look like if the master in our story does not represent God. But rather, the master is precisely who the story says he is. A rich, aristocratic, absentee landowner who has a manager running his agricultural affairs while he lives in the city pursuing other interests. And to let you know that this arrangement was not uncommon in Jesus' day, the Jewish nobility, or the master class, amassed huge amounts of acreages, vineyards, orchards. And often these lands were rented out to tenant farmers. And when free, yet still subsistent, landowning peasants could not meet the high levels of taxation imposed either by the Romans or by the temple authorities, then the aristocratic landowners would either buy their land for a song or hold a loan on the land. And if there was a poor crop that year, and the peasant could not repay the loan, then the land was forfeit, thus adding to the nobleman's already incredible wealth, while the peasant, of course, would be left digging ditches or begging for a living. And what is so important to note, and I'm going to emphasize this, it's very important you take note, so that we might better understand this parable, is that according to God's law, according to Torah, the charging of interest on loans was forbidden. But to circumvent God's wishes, noblemen would then bury the interest on their loans alongside the principal. Let me explain. Think, for example, I'm a peasant, and I need to borrow 10 denarii, which is a sizable amount of money in those days, against my land or against my crop. And I have to borrow this in order to plant seed or maybe to pay taxes to my buddies, the Romans. And let's say the interest charge that I will be charged is 2 denarii. What the nobleman is going to do is bury those 2 denarii alongside my principal of 10. In other words, the loan would be recorded in the master's books as 12 denarii instead of 10. You see what's happening? But it doesn't stop there. The master's manager would then step in and he'd want to take his cut. He would keep his own ledgers, of course, recording my loan at a face value of 15 denarii. 12 denarii reserved for his master, and 3 for himself as a tidy little income supplement. So on the manager's books, I will have taken out a loan of 15 denarii. 5 of that now is being interest charges, right? And the other 10, the principal. And as if God would not have seen this practice going on. So returning to our parable, when the manager reduces the amounts his debtors owe, really, he's first eliminating his own little income supplement, right? And then perhaps a small portion of the interest that's due to his master. Isn't this shrewd, eh? Of course, the peasant benefits because now he owes a lesser amount. The master's happy because his collections went up. And he has lost only perhaps a small amount of interest, but no principal. Finally, the manager's happy. After all, why wouldn't the master have praised his ingenuity and let him keep his job? Now, are we all scratching our heads? So what's the point of this parable? What point is Jesus trying to make with this parable? The point is this. You have to recognize the fact that Jesus is a subversive. Contrary to some of the photographs, pictures, that we have hanging in our churches of Jesus being so, docile and gentle. I'm sure he was, maybe at times. But he's also a subversive. He's a radical Jewish rabbi who is fed up with the practices of the rich that strip the common folk of their lands, their ability to feed their families, and even their dignity. He's a social justice advocate, this Jesus of ours. And he's an advocate at a time when the peasants have no voice and no rights. And certainly no social security programs. And he must tell parables to teach the peasants so as not to be accused of sedition by the Sadducees or the Pharisees or the Romans that may be listening on at a short distance. So this clever Jewish rabbi develops this technique of telling parables, where you won't understand them right away, but when you go home and you discuss them with your friends and neighbors and family, ideas will start to percolate. And so, with this parable, Jesus encourages his hearers to be just as crafty and shrewd, even perhaps a little bit dishonest at times, in order that they might have at least a fighting chance at survival. Accuse the manager, he's saying to his peasant hearers. Accuse him of being more dishonest than usual. Because that will put a whole series of events into motion. From the master accusing the manager and threatening to take away his job, to the manager being willing to take a loss to keep his job, to you, the peasants, coming out ahead with smaller taxes, smaller debts. Be creative, Jesus is saying. Be creative. Be creative when fighting for your lives. Be as crafty. Be as shrewd as the managers and the noblemen you're up against. Look for ways to come out ahead. God is not like this master. In fact, God stands against him and with you. And when you yourselves decide to take your stand, do not kill, do not harm, but do all you can to save yourselves and your families. And know this, that God is on your side. Amen.